start, guys, because we still need to catch a train to Leeds. So if the universe had a beginning, then it must have had a... And if that creator did create the universe, then was it an ordered creation? And if so, do we have evidence for it being ordered? Yes, the universe is so finely tuned as to be, without doubt, even according to atheist scientists, as being something that definitely smacks of being ordered and designed. And if the universe is designed and it had a beginning, we're going to look at life itself. What does it take for life to exist? But before we go into what does it take for life to exist, let's look at our own solar system's fitness for life. So, I don't know if you know, but our own solar system and the fact that we're on it needs any life form that we see on planet Earth, even though if it's not carbon-based life forms, like the question that Chris was getting at, even if it's nitrogen or phosphorus. So we found life deep in the oceans, but it needed the heat of volcanic eruptions, it needed water, it needed. That life-permitting thing that causes life to exist is called the habitable zone, the life zone. And it's determined by how far a planet is away from its sun to get enough heat and to have liquid water, vapor water, and frozen water at the same time possible in that planet for there to be life-permitting situations. We're the only planet, so if we were a red dwarf star, we'd have to be much closer to our star than we are with a yellow dwarf star, which is our sun. And if we had a white supernova, we could be further away. The problem with these and that is that that's not going to last very long, and that's going to be highly radiation-based. And life just can't live in those examples. We'll get to that in a minute. But Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. And when I was growing up, I had this diagram because Pluto is there. But you guys have now said that Pluto isn't a planet, but I still can't change my mind. So Pluto is there. Earth is the only planet that is in the habitable zone. And if you notice, I've done this specifically, and it's on other websites as well. Mars just touches the edge of a habitable zone. It used to have its own atmosphere. It used to, but it doesn't anymore. But it's almost touching that habitable zone. And that's why probably Elon Musk is now trying to create a project to go out into Mars and to create a living environment on Mars. That's not what we're talking about here. So, a larger star creates rapid unstable burning. A smaller star, planet's rotation period is too long with extreme temperatures, but we're right in the right place with the kind of star that we have. So this type of star is important. I'm going to rush through these, I'm sorry, but because of timing, I want to get to the miracle of life itself more than that. Even the type of gravity and the size of the planet is important. So Mars is just on the edge, but Mars has a smaller, it weighs less than Earth, is less dense, has less gravity, and so over time it couldn't keep its atmosphere, and its atmosphere evaporated. If it had higher gravity, higher mass, it would have kept its atmosphere, and it would have created the environment for which life could have existed. But it wasn't big enough. So the mass of a planet is important as well. The amount of heavy elements formed at the beginning of creation, the universe, is really important because when it goes into the core of a planet, it helps the planet to have rich minerals and materials for life. Again, we won't be able to go into as much detail as we want. The need for types of stars, supernova. Rush through a few slides, but in basic terms, we live in the Milky Way. Our Milky Way is shaped like an S. our S-shaped galaxy has at its heart a black hole or star that exploded, and it's a very high radiation at the center, and lots of planets are being sucked in and lots of stars, and it creates a very dangerous environment at the beginning, at the center of our Milky Way. If our sun was anywhere close to the center, then life would not be permissible, because it would be full of radiation and it would live and die and get to a certain point and then be wiped out. So the prime and the best location for our sun is to be right on the edge of this S-shaped galaxy, and we're right on the edge. That's our sun. You are here. We're right on the edge. So even the placement of our sun in our own galaxy is perfect for us and for any life. More than that, Earth itself, after it formed 4.5 billion years ago, about 4 billion to 3.5 billion years ago, we were hit with a Mars-sized planet. And it hit the Earth, and it became part of our central core, and it ejected our core out into the out beyond us. And what it ejected formed a moon, which is our moon now. And the thing that bashed into our Earth was still full of reaction, that it formed the core of our planet on the inside. It's red hot and it's constantly moving, and it's creating those tectonic plate movements. And if it didn't have that, this is the effect. So it became part of our, I've just talked about that. So what effect did it have when the moon hit us? We then became on a tilt towards the sun of 23.5 degrees. That 23.5 degrees ensures that we get summer and winter, and we get the motion of water and the seasons going around our planet. I know that I'll have to skip it, but we get to slides where it shows the ozone layer. Because we're at the tilt, we create a natural ozone gravitational electromagnetic layer, that protects us from the radiation of the sun. So we don't get irradiated with the sun, because we get a ready-made protection that is the gravitational, the electromagnetic force around the sun. I'll explain in a sec. Sorry for my being like this. When we got hit by the moon, before we got hit by the moon, you thought your day was very busy. Before we got hit by the moon, the Earth was rotating around itself 8 hours a day. You wouldn't have had chance to work, sleep, 8 hours. You thought your day was busy. It was really busy back then. After we got hit by the moon-sized object, the Mars-sized object that became into our core, 24 hours. Before we were hit, we had 500 mile per hour winds. We were spinning really fast. After we were hit, we've got the kind of winds that we've got now. Maximum 80 or 90 miles per hour. So even the interaction of a moon with Earth was vital. It produced just right conditions. If you want to read up on that, it's a good book called Rare Earth, and I've put the references in. It hit us at just the right time. If it had hit us now, it would have wiped out all life. It didn't hit us now. The moon-sized object, the Mars-sized object that created our moon, hit us right in the early days of the Earth's coming to life. Our moon is a freak, and when you look later on into how likely is life, it made life perfect for it to exist, and not just life as we know it, but everything else. Without the moon, it's likely that we wouldn't have birds, we wouldn't have tall trees like the redwoods in Canada, we wouldn't have whales, we wouldn't have all these different kinds of animals. More than that, Mars wasn't hit by a moon, and so Mars is one big solid rock. The fact that we were hit by a moon meant our crust was broken up, and it went into the core, and our crust wasn't over all the surface of the Earth, so it created movement of our top layer crust, and it creates tectonic plates that create our mountains, create our earthquakes, create our environment. That earthquake that we get of our tectonic plates interacting, every time it grates and it releases oxygen from the inside of the Earth out into our oxygen layer to create our atmosphere. Mars doesn't have enough oxygen because it's lost its oxygen. It's one big solid mass. It's not got a tectonic plate. There's nothing to move because it's one big solid mass on the surface. No way of creating its own atmosphere, constantly growing and generating. Sorry to get into the detail, but our Earth is amazing. Fit for life. Even the tilt is important. I want to show you this ozone layer properly. This ozone layer protects us from the most harmful radiation that comes from the sun. We're protected naturally by the Earth's crust. You know that thing that Mars-sized object hit the Earth, started spinning inside the center of our Earth? That spin creates a north and a south pole. The north and south pole creates a magnetic current of protection around the outside of our planet, and that pushes away harmful radiation that comes from the sun. Naturally, we're protected because we've got a magnetic north and south on the Earth. And you can try and study that if you want, and look into that further. With all that being said, what do we need to have a life-permitting planet? So one of the questions is about other life. I think, Thomas, you raised that first. Planets, other life forms, aliens. I think, Mark, you did as well? Can't remember. Bishoy? Okay. Bishoy, you raised it. Thank you. So, you not only need an Earth-sized planet in a habitable zone, not only do you need the right type of star, not only do you need it to be rocky and to have tectonic plates that don't cover all the surface of the planet, not only do you need the right amount of water, the planet needs to have a right amount of water and a magnetic field to protect you against the ozone, harmful radiation of the sun. You also need a large moon close by that it protects, and it creates tides and right atmosphere, and you can go on. All of these probabilities for life. How probable is life on any other planet? In 1995, we believed that there were 41 characteristics that we needed for there to be life of any type, not just carbon-based life form, life of any type on a planet needed 41 finely tuned characteristics. That gives a probability of 1 over 10 to the 31. If you imagine that there are 10 to the 86 elemental particles, there are less planets than that in our universe. We don't have unlimited planets. We've only got, even if every particle was a planet, you've got 1 in 10 to the 86 planets, okay? Which it isn't. In the year 2000, we found that we've now got 128 finely tuned characteristics that we've discovered that no, there are these other things that need to be there, otherwise life wouldn't exist on a planet of any kind. That ratio means that we have to have a choice of a planet, 1 in 10 to the 144 planets. The likelihood of finding life in a planet is 1 over 10 to the 144, more than the fundamental particles in the universe, let alone planets. And now, in 2004, not even now, we've discovered that there are 322 finely tuned characteristics for life, leaving the probability of finding life on any other planet 1 over 10 to the 282. I'm a big fan of Star Wars. I'm a big fan of Star Trek. Unfortunately, the numbers show that it would be highly improbable for there to be life anywhere else, that we're living in a just right planet as well. Do you get what I'm doing, what I'm saying? Yes, Harry?
If what you're saying about, like, God created everything so finely tuned,
then maybe
so
he created
it all finely tuned somewhere else.
Absolutely. That goes beyond my understanding, absolutely, maybe. But what we're noticing is the science says that we're living in a planet that is unique, so very, very unique that the likelihood of finding life on any other planet without God is almost zero. Without God is almost zero. Any thoughts?
I have one.
Yeah.
Chris. Chris had the mic. Go for it, Chris.
If God does all, it's what you described about like this big Mars type rock and everything like that, and the tilt of the Earth and the radiation. It sounds a bit like he's wrong some way of going about it. What if I was in, I'd just set up, unless we bored on Saturday or something like that, you know, rather than go to all the extremes of doing this, like getting a rock to smash another rock and so you know what I mean?
Yep, it seems too far-fetched. Why does it have to go to all that trouble for life to exist? I don't know. But if we live in such a complex universe, then maybe that was one of the few ways for life to happen on Earth, that he machined it that way so that there is life and not that there isn't life. I don't know, Chris. It's one of those things that I'm just flabbergasted by the probabilities being totally against us existing. Alex?
God probably did it that way just around the laws of physics. He made these laws of physics and he was like, okay, the way we can do this is this way. You know, the planet smashing into Earth, creating a moon and all that, and creating that complexity so that we can realise, oh wait, Earth's, you know, the universe is pretty cool. You know,
Could be.
couldn't have happened
It
by
definitely
chance.
points to his coolness. It definitely points to it being just right. Absolutely. What was your question over here, guys?
I had a similar comment, which I'm not gonna go on, but yeah, like Alex said, like what you explained makes me think, like in my minus brain, but makes me think that this was somewhat necessary
Yep.
for the existence of life, like 10 to the what?
311 and 282
Yeah, so
there.
that was necessary to have the universe.
Yep. And the
But
universe
then-
couldn't
but-
exist without him because it came
Exactly.
from nothing.
And then life wouldn't be existing without this, right?
Yep. And we haven't
And
actually.
maybe that was the only way. Like you couldn't have a planet fit for life just with that.
Yep.
So it had to happen.
And we haven't even got to life itself yet.
Yeah.
But how do you read this verse? If now, today, you come across this verse in the Bible, read it out to us, Harry. Sorry, we'll come to you in a sec. Sorry. No, keep your hand up, so I remember.
For this is what the Lord says: He who created the heavens, He is God. He who fashioned and made the earth, He founded it. He did not create it to be empty, but formed it to be inhabited. He says, I am the Lord, and there is no other.
What do you think about this verse now?
Makes sense.
He didn't create the world, the earth, to be empty. It could have absolutely been empty. The vast probability is there for it to be an empty, lifeless planet. No, he inhabited it because that's him. He does it. Your question?
Like, you say all these like really small figures, but you just get like smaller and smaller and smaller, like keep going infinitely small.
Yep, and when you put them all together, they're really infinitely small.
Yeah, but the point is, as long as there's still like that possibility of one, there's still the possibility.
Yeah, but again, you're going back to the idea that my sons are saying the ball dropped out of a plane from Heathrow Airport. Let's not try and block out the possibility.
I'm just saying like you do like.
No, I know,
like,
but-
can't you just like say this is the number?
At Imperial College, when we first began to have this debate, it started out, science absolutely disproves God. You know what? As we progressed, the cosmologists went quiet because we asked them, does the science show that the universe has a beginning? Put your hand down if science does, and they put their hands down. Put your hand, and we asked specific questions. And then the physicists, how finely tuned, are these numbers real? Put your hands down from putting them up that you still disbelieve in God. Put your hands down if these numbers really are that finely tuned. They put their hands down. The biologists still had their hands up. The Islamic society never had their hands up. They believed in God, but they maybe had their hands on knives and whatever, but that's something else. It was a really fierce debate after, and they challenged us to another debate on is the Bible or the Quran the Word of God. But we had a really good discussion with them. But that wasn't the subject of that day. Sorry for that bad comment about another religion.
You know, like
But-
when you say the probability of life on the planets is like really minute. So,
Where were you for the first two talks?
I was in bed.
So while you were in bed, the universe was created from nothing. While you were in bed, the universe was so finely tuned, there's no doubt that there was a design.
Okay, no, I agree with all.
Okay.
But if the probability of life on the planets is so minute, but then if the universe is infinite, would
It isn't. The universe is not infinite. The universe has existed for 13.8 billion years. If you Google the number of fundamental particles, you'd find that it's 10 to the 86 fundamental particles, let alone planets. There's much less planets than there are particles. The universe is not infinite.
But there's no proof that it's
Oh yes, there is. As a scientist,
It's on
you
YouTube.
can actually work out.
It's on YouTube, yeah.
As a scientist, you can actually work out the mass of the universe, the size, the number of particles, the number of this, the number of that. The universe is not infinite.
This is shut my argument.
Carry on.
I was going to say if it was infinite,
Yeah,
within eventually there would be life on the planets.
and that's
Because
sort of the
even if it's
point.
so minute,
Even if it's so minute, wasn't it?
eventually.
But the point is, what is the probability that God has designed it versus the probability that this is pure chance?
That's not the argument, that's not the argument.
What's the probability that we don't know all the answers? No matter, we only have the physics to understand what's in our.
But I'm showing you the physics. The physics shows a limited universe with a limited time in existence. And it shows that it's, the physics itself shows that it has a designer, that it's finely tuned. Even the atheist scientists say it's as if you're burying your head in the sand if you don't believe that the universe is finely tuned.
But you could argue that you say it's probabilities, might it happened, you're with me on this, so it happened, we're here, don't me now. We're here, it happened,
We would be here.
we won't have this discussion, absolutely. So it could have been, just look,
And at that point,
and it's not, we've got, it's not a probability of God, it's not that it isn't.
yeah,
The probability, it happened, we're discussing this now, so they're both 100% at this stage.
absolutely. But then I grab that
I'm
and
going
say,
now.
hand on hand, and I say, together, let's discuss this.
Yeah.
If God doesn't exist, then what have I got to lose in not following him? I've only got to lose the rest of my life.
Yeah.
If God does exist,
That's
then
Pascal's wager.
yeah, Pascal's wager, I've got eternity.
Pascal's wager.
Bravo.
If God exists and you believe, you gain everything. If you don't believe, you lose everything.
Your son is also Eucharist now.
If God doesn't exist and you believe, then
You're not losing anything.
you've not really lost anything. I mean, like you've not done maybe all the things in life that's present. But if he doesn't exist and you don't believe, then nothing happens.
You've lost eternity.
But then the argument to that is obviously God knows if you're only believing so that you can like gain eternal life.
Yeah, but you're not just, but you're beginning to build a relationship with him based on the Pascal's wager. It just starts you into that discussion.
Yeah, but have you read Dostoevsky?
Yeah, Dostoevsky is a very strong Christian. Yeah, read his book, The Idiot. And it isn't about an idiot, it's about a very wise man that's accused of not sort of thinking. Anyway, we'll go on. Yep, crime and punishment's great, and their discussions about God is amazing. Sorry, Harry, your question's about.
Chris Jr.
It doesn't have to be down to football, because like some people have used it when you
Yeah,
So there is a small probability.
there is, but what should I explore first? Should I talk to Danny first, or should I ignore the fact that it might be Danny's football?
Yeah, keep the ball.
But you know what I mean? That's the thing. In life, is it worth me trying to discover, does God really exist? Because that's the most probable, in my opinion, explanation for God's existence. Should I talk to him, get to know him, and then dismiss him first? But I have to try. I can't dismiss him and then leave him right to the last day of my life and say, the probability might not be him at all. He's such a big probability that I need to engage Pascal wager, get to know him, and then see for myself.
But you thought it's more likely to be Danny's ball as God putting that ball in the garden. God can do it.
No. Okay, let's move on. Okay, carry on.
You have 15 minutes.
Yeah, carry on.
A better way to like prove the Christianity is to find people. The best way to do something is to try and disprove it. And so ask people who are trying to like disprove Christianity if they disprove it.
Yeah, that is a way, and that is some talks that we have later on. Christianity being disproved. It's not today's topic. So today's topic is about looking at cosmology, science, life, and answering those questions. But there are topics that will exactly be a brilliant point about disproving Christianity. Can it be disproved? It's a brilliant question. And it's covered in topics such as, did the resurrection really happen? Are the prophecies in the Bible really prophesying the coming of Christ? What we've got as this last big stage is the miracle of life itself. So, if the universe had a beginning, it must have had a creator. If the universe is so finely tuned, it must have had a designer. If our Earth, our solar system, is so fit for life, then maybe we're not only designed, but we're so special in comparison to all the planets in our galaxy that God has made us special. What about life itself? So, as another story of me being a dad, I bought this ant farm several Christmases back, many, many Christmases back, because it promised on the box, you can see life happening. And it worked. When we opened it, we put some ants in from the garden, and for a while, the ants started to make trails, and we can see it, and it's visible. And it's supposed to be a gel that has enough gel qualities for ants to exist and live for a long time. That's what it says on the box. Within 3 or 4 weeks, it became a horror show. Ants were dying, left, right, and centre, and within a month or two, it's a complete cemetery. No living ants. Life is hard. And I had to hide this thing, and hopefully in time they would forget that we even bought it, and I just threw it away afterwards. Life takes a miracle. I hope in this next set of slides I'll show you how much does life take to exist. For natural selection to work, even if, you guys are going to invite Father Michael to do the talk on evolution, right? Mm-hmm. Grab him, set a date with him, don't let him go without that date, Maha, please. So, he's amazing at this topic. If for natural selection to work, even just to start, you need a self-reproducing organism. An organism that is able to self-reproduce itself, otherwise you can't even start evolution, right? You need to have a self-reproducing entity. Do you get me? In order to have a self-reproducing entity, what's the simplest conceivable such unit? We're going to look at that. And it's incredibly complex. We're going to look at the fact that you need this before you can even contemplate evolution, which we won't get to. Remember this guy, Sir Fred Hoyle? Big atheist, who became a Christian because of finding that God is monkeying around with the laws of physics to such a degree that he, from being a big atheist that would challenge people in debates for 15 years or more, he gave his life to Christ and became a Christian. Well, he also did this work to prove how life was so difficult, because that was his study, that was his PhD, was in the birth of stars, nucleosynthesis, stellar nucleosynthesis, and also how life comes about. So in the 1950s, Sir Fred Hoyle was the leader of a group of some very talented experimental and theoretical physicists. This group realised the basic ideas of how all the chemical elements in our universe were manufactured in all different stars before it got into the planets. That's not important right now. Hoyle made a prediction of the energy levels in carbon, etc. That's what made him a Christian. I don't have time, so I'm going to rush into. That's what led him to faith. And what we're about here is this. Hoyle showed maths proofs that you can see on specific websites of his proof of life existing. He said, let's take that there are about 10 to the 80 atomic particles in the universe. There's 10 to the 86. Google's got a bit better over time. Let's assume it's a nice number of 10 to the 80 particles. If the universe were actually 15 billion years old, again, the universe is 13.8 billion years old, but it makes the maths work in his calculations. Then we believe that, well, we know 15 billion years would give us 10 to the 18 seconds since the birth of the universe. You'll get where we're going with this. If every second and every atomic particle, every second, 10 to the 18 seconds, and every atomic particle was an experiment to try and bash all the particles together, every second, all the particles of the universe, to try and create life by accident, this would amount to 10 to the 98 experiments. In order to produce life, we showed earlier that you need you need a chance of 10 to the 40,000 to create life by accident. In order to have a self-reproducing entity that has, let me just see if there's a slide missing in between. Yes, there is, I forgot, I'm gonna jump. The smallest self-reproducing entity that we know is about 2,000 enzymes and proteins long, and that's a small bacterium. But again, the maths is very difficult with that, so he said, I'm going to show you the numbers, but with 400 enzyme proteins length. So with a hypothetical cell of only 400 enzymes and proteins in length, he shows the probability of life by chance to be 1 in 10 to the 40,000. Life coming together by chance, 1 in 10 to the 40,000. And he explains how he gets that number, because you need certain conditions, you need certain three-dimensional shapes to come together in the right way, and you need the building blocks of life to come together all at once, because you can't evolve them, because you haven't got a self-reproducing entity yet. So it needs to come by chance right at the beginning. You might not understand where he gets that number from, but can you follow me so far? 400 enzyme protein length, enzymes and proteins in length, and the probability of 1 in 10 to the 40,000. If you've got 10 to the 18 seconds since the beginning of the universe and 10 to the 80 particles, and you somehow are able to hit all the particles together with every other particle every second, then you've got 10 to the 98 experiments. 10 to the 98 experiments is still way short of 10 to the 40,000 probability of creating life by chance. So let's make every microsecond an experiment. You only add 6 to this, so you get 10 to the 144 experiments. Still way short of that number. Now, let's bring in, this is my bit, let's bring in multiverse theory. Let's make every atomic particle itself a universe. So we're going to make 10 to the 86 universes out there, multiverse theory. That would take 10 to the 204 experiments. Still hugely way out of life, starting from a self-reproducing entity that needs a probability of 10 to the 40,000. It's astronomical. The chances of getting life by accident, even from the beginning of the universe till now, is so way out, let alone the fact that Earth is not 15 billion years old. Earth is only 4.5 billion years old. Our own sun is 4.4 something billion years old. The chances of life coming into existence by chance, the building block of a self-reproducing entity, is so improbable that life itself wouldn't exist without God's intervention. When you pick up the book, The Selfish, is it The Selfish Gene? No, when you pick up the book, The Blind Watchmaker. The Blind Watchmaker, written by Richard Dawkins, starts page 1, page 2. You open the book, and it says, guess what? Let's suppose we had a self-reproducing entity. What? How did we get a self-reproducing? No, let's suppose we had a self-reproducing entity. But how did we get a self-reproducing entity? I'm Richard Dawkins, I'm writing my book, and I'm saying, let's suppose we had a self-reproducing... Okay, Richard, let's suppose we had a self-reproducing entity. Even though the odds are totally astronomical that you would have, at the beginning, a self-reproducing entity. Because he writes in The Blind Watchmaker that you can then evolve and build building blocks that come together much quicker. But only because he said, let's suppose we have a self-reproducing entity. You don't have that, but let's say you do. There are few functional enzymes with less than 100 amino acids. Most have hundreds. But let's say, what are the likelihood of you creating a living organism with the amino acids that you've got? How many amino acids would have to be strung together in the proper sequence for this self-replicating molecule? This protein must catalyze and join together, and one of the best videos you can watch online is by, who's that very angry nucleus?
Tudor.
Yeah.
James Tudor.
What?
James Tudor, I think.
James something, we'll tell you in a sec. But anyway, you can Google his video, he's really good at this stuff, this is his job. No such thing, so the protein must catalyze itself while joining itself in the amino acid chain. When you do the biology aspect, you're trying to fit a 3D object inside another 3D object and hit it at the exact right angles in order for amino acids to be created together, even when they automatically repel each other in forming long chain amino acids. James Tudor?
I'll get to you.
So functional enzymes have a 3D structure, so this enzyme will have to unravel itself to allow amino acids to line up along the right way and then to reassemble itself in three-dimensional space. What's his name?
James Tour.
James Tour, T-O-U-R.
Yes.
So look up James Tour for this bit. The probability, even if you had a self-reproducing entity, to be able to create any meaningful basic life, again, is 4.7 to the 103 experiments. It's a really unbelievable figure. I'll show you the maths later if you want, but you can Google James Tour and have a look at how improbable life is. I wanted to give 5 minutes at least for some questions. Even more difficult though is, who studied morning sickness drug, thalidomide? Anyone come across thalidomide? Okay, what problems did it cause, thalidomide, Alex?
Well, they made a different version of thalidomide, and in the 50s they gave it to pregnant women and it caused birth defects.
It caused birth defects. What was the problem? What was the problem with the thalidomide they first created in the 1950s to stop morning sickness?
Well, there was a left-handed
Spin,
one.
chirality.
Yeah, there was a left-handed one, there was a right-handed one. And
All nature has which spin?
all nature's which spin?
So all natural living organisms are only chirality, or that spin that you call the left hand and right hand, only one type of spin. I can't remember which is left or right, if anyone can help me. Maybe we'll check. But all nature has only one type, and they made this drug, but of a different chirality or different spin. Even though it should help with morning sickness, it ended up creating birth defects of people with limbs that only go up to their first joint of the elbows and the legs, because it didn't have the right spin. So amino acids not only need to line up in the right three-dimensional space, they also need to be of the right type, left or right chirality. And that hugely blows out the probability even more. but we won't go there. Let's take questions with that final slide.
I just have a comment.
Yes,
Just
please.
after this. You know, in my last time when I was working, I worked in single cell. The complexity of a single cell for the function, for the cell itself. When a gene is knocked out, another gene will replace it. And there is a communication between gene to gene. And it's not just communication of gene to gene, but gene to junk. The area around the gene is actually controlling the gene. And we still, the complexity is going more and more. If you look just to the biology and you see how people can say that it comes randomly, it's impossible. The ways that the cell, organize itself all the time, the same structure, whether you go for an amoeba or a bacteria to human, the same structure, all the time got it right at a certain level, and the communication between protein to protein is another high complex way. So if you think about this, think about what after. The complexity of one single cell entity is huge. And that's why cancer is very hard to tackle, because the cells had, as if they have a mind they can actually do.
Am I right in saying that you're saying it's fair enough that you just created life from nothing by chance,
Yeah.
but then in the next second it got squished by a fireball, and now you have to start all over again? And
How?
and the communication between that and all this.
It's called system biology. And no one can build a system biology for a single cell. All the human mind in the world, they cannot build, because it's so complex, and every single day we discover new things about a single cell. So even if we have life by chance, how they actually work is also a miracle.
So any questions on that section of life? So I'm looking at the doctors and the biologists and which is most of the room.
I think they asked their questions.
If the universe had a beginning, we can suppose it had a creator at the beginning. That creator created space, time, matter, energy. So he must be outside of space, outside of time, immaterial, full of energy, all-powerful. If the universe had a beginning, and it's so finely tuned for life that we can see that to all intents and purposes, there is a designer behind it. The universe had a beginning, it's got a designer. Life is so perfect, not only life microcosm level, but even placement of our planet in the right place of our sun, in the right space in our solar system, in the right space in our galaxy, on the S-shaped galaxy, not close to the beginning, to the middle of the star. And it's got the right size star, the right this, and if life itself takes a miracle, I'm saying to you that science, if looked at properly, points more to God's existence than it points against his existence. And we'll stop there, unless anyone has any final questions. Go for it, Alex.
Most of this doesn't tie into it being Christianity.
Yeah, you're right, because this is only one...
Most of this doesn't tie into Christianity.
You're right. This only touches on God, cosmology, creation. The next set of talks talk about morality, talk about the Bible and its inerrancy, and how the Bible is to be looked at as a document of truth. And we look at prophecy, we look at fulfillment in Christ. Then there's another talk that looks at the evidence for the resurrection. There's another set of talks that look at why suffering, why pain, why morality, where can morality come from? Euthanasia, and before that you talk about evolution. So in order to get to the point of Christianity, there's a set of other talks that we need to get to. Sorry.
And it's an apologetic group, so we need to talk from a different angle rather than Christianity. Because if I'm talking to an atheist or talking to someone who has doubt, I have have to address his doubt in order for him to question that doubt and come back to the Bible. But I cannot tell him about the Bible and he said to me, the Bible is not accurate. So I have to go to his way and then go back. So that's why apologetics, we always talk about what you have in your hand, let's talk about it and see. If it is proven, okay. If it is not proven,
I feel like people use the Bible as a kind of science book, like you said before about, you know, air having weight and all the stuff about Earth being spherical and all that. You know, people for a long time have used the Bible to explain things, like, you know, as a God of the gaps, kind of filling in the gaps in our knowledge.
My God is the God of the whole thing, the whole show. He's not just the God of explaining, he's the God that explains absolutely everything. I don't need a gap to appear for me to say, oh yeah, that shows that God exists. No, he's the God of absolutely everything. We wouldn't be here. He's the God of the whole show.
Yeah, I just feel like sometimes people can follow the Bible, you know, to the letter.
This is the point that Uncle Rufford made, that we shouldn't let science rate our Bible. We shouldn't let science rate our understanding of God. It's the other way around. So science will only add to our faith and to help others to know that God exists who are far away. But in no way can help us to understand the reality and the complexity and the beauty and the joy that God in our life brings.
Yeah.
But what a powerful statement. You've reached the same deep concern that Uncle Rufford had. And it's important that we don't use the God of the gaps argument. Science isn't just there to show that there are gaps and so God exists. No, that's not what we're about. And I hope today I didn't give that impression. He's the God of the whole show.
I just want to say thank you very much. We get a lot of questions that I personally cannot answer. And I think it was Steph that I have to give the credit to, because when I said to her we get a lot of questions about this topic, she said you need to speak to her. And I spoke also to Evangelos, who's not here today, but I want to say in a sending meeting and his love, and he was very supportive of the COAT team coming to speak with us and do a series. So we're very grateful for that as well.
And Evangelos had the vision to start the COAT team.
yes.
So he said we need to be able to form a group that he will fully support, to be able to research all these topics.
And I think what today has highlighted is that there are a lot more questions that we haven't been able to answer in one day, and it was quite rushed. So I hope that you will come back to carry on the series. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming. I have to say one thing. It's give me a joy to see you coming to ask questions openly. A lot of you said, oh, but this is wrong. The church is actually inventing this. No, the church has answers. Come and ask. And if the person you ask cannot, there are some people that actually can answer all your questions. Don't just listen to the world saying to you, the church cannot answer. The church is actually cannot do anything. This is just a kind of hierarchy, the church, and all of these, guys, ignore. Come and ask. Christ said one thing in John 6:37. He said, whoever comes to me from my Father, I will not cast him away. He will not cast you away. If you come to Christ and ask, if you come to his church and ask, no one will cast you and say, no, you are evil, you're thinking evil. No, there are answers, and believe it or not, all questions has been asked before, hundreds, millions of times. It's just come and ask it again, because there is nothing except one thing. When we talk about God's head and before time, we don't have an answer for this. It's only God revelation to us. I hope to see you more next time. See you again. Always thanks Ihab. Ihab is our brilliant speaker. He's always there, and he's enjoying giving these talks. And I thank the core team and thank you all. Let us pray.